I never thought the man I married, the deaf tech millionaire who showed me more tenderness than anyone ever had, was hiding something so devastating that it would break me while I was 6 months pregnant with his child. The night he finally confessed, the night he told me that he had heard every word I'd ever whispered to him in trust, every secret I shared thinking he lived in silence, something inside me shattered so quietly I almost didn't notice it at first. I remember staring at him, my hands resting on my belly, feeling our baby move while the truth hit me harder than I was ready for. And if you're here listening, thank you, your presence means more than you know. If this story resonates with you in any way, feel free to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next chapter of this journey I'm finally brave enough to tell. I still remember the exact moment my life split into a before and an after, and it happened so quietly that if someone else had been in the room with us, they might not have realized anything was wrong. I was 6 months pregnant, tired in that heavy, slow way that seems to seep right into your bones, and all I wanted was a calm evening with the man I believed I knew better than anyone. The man I thought lived his entire life in silence. The man I thought I loved without conditions. He sat across from me, sighing softly, his eyes gentle in that familiar way that always made me feel safe. But that night something in his face looked different, like he was holding his breath, waiting for a moment he didn't want to arrive. At first, I didn't think much of it. I was used to the stress of his work, being a tech millionaire didn't give him many quiet days, and I tried to brush it off, telling myself he was just tired. But the way he kept watching me, like he was memorizing something he was afraid to lose, made me uneasy in a way I couldn't explain. I tried to shake it off, placing my hand over my belly when the baby kicked, smiling at him the way I always did. He smiled back, but it didn't reach his eyes. That was the first sign that something was coming, something I wasn't prepared for. It's strange how your mind will try to protect you right up to the last possible second. Mine did. Even when he put his hands down, stopping mid-sentence, even when he looked away with tears gathering in his eyes, I still told myself everything was fine. Maybe it was the pregnancy hormones, maybe it was denial, but I kept holding on to the version of him I had built in my mind, the kind, brilliant, resilient man who had survived so much. I used to admire the way he navigated the world without hearing it, how he relied on subtle cues, touch, light, vibration. I fell in love with the way he communicated, with the way his hands spoke for him. I fell in love with the quiet between us. I thought it meant something sacred. I thought it made us stronger. I didn't know I had fallen in love with an illusion. When he finally looked at me and opened his mouth to speak, actually speak, my heart stopped. His voice was soft, rough, like someone remembering how to use a part of themselves they hadn't touched in years. And the first thing he said wasn't an apology, or an explanation. It was my name. Hearing him say it shook me in a way I still can't fully describe. I froze. My mind couldn't make sense of it, couldn't bridge the gap between the man I knew and the man sitting in front of me now. He spoke again, slow and careful, as if he was relearning how to shape the words, and every sound felt like a betrayal. I can hear, he said. I always could. Those words landed in my chest like a blow. I wanted to tell myself I misheard him, that pregnancy fatigue was playing tricks on my mind, but he kept talking, explaining, unraveling years of lies with a calmness that made everything feel even worse. I didn't interrupt him. I couldn't. My whole body felt numb, like I'd slipped out of myself and was watching everything from a distance. He told me he had lost his hearing temporarily as a child but regained it fully by the time he was 12. He told me he kept pretending because it felt safer, easier, because being the deaf boy protected him from expectations he wasn't ready to face. He told me he kept it up as an adult because it helped him in business. People underestimated him, revealed things in front of him, trusted him in ways they wouldn't have if they knew the truth. And then he told me something that made my blood run cold. He didn't tell me because he loved how I spoke to him when I thought he couldn't hear. He loved hearing the things I whispered when I believed it was just between me and the quiet air. He heard every laugh, every frustration, every insecurity. He heard me cry in the bathroom when the pregnancy tests kept coming back negative. He heard me tell myself I wasn't sure he really loved me the night we had our first big fight. He heard every private moment, every vulnerable truth. He heard all of it. And while he spoke, I sat there with one hand on my belly, feeling the tiny movements inside me, and wondering how much of my life had been built on a lie. The worst part wasn't even the lie itself. It was realizing that he had never given me a choice. He took away my right to decide what to share, to decide how close I wanted him to be. I felt invaded, exposed, stripped of the trust one had spent years building. And as he kept talking, his voice trembling now, I realized I wasn't just losing trust in him. I was losing the version of myself that believed in us. That was the moment everything in my life tilted, the moment that leads into what came next, when his confession forced me to make a decision I never imagined I would face. When he finished speaking, the room felt unbearably small, like the air had thickened around us and I couldn't quite breathe. I remember staring at him, trying to recognize the man I had married, trying to find even a small piece of the person I thought I knew, but everything felt unfamiliar. It was as if I had been living with a stranger whose smile, whose touch, whose gentle silence had all been part of a performance I never agreed to attend. He kept saying my name, quietly, his voice trembling now in a way that made him seem strangely young, almost scared. And part of me, the part that had spent years loving him, wanted to reach for him, to hold on to what we had built. But the bigger part of me, tired, pregnant, vulnerable, felt exposed in a way that shook me to my core. I asked him why he waited until now, why he chose the moment, when I was carrying our child, to finally tell me the truth. And he said something that made my stomach turn. He told me he didn't want to risk losing me before the baby came, that he thought I would leave him if he told me sooner. He said he didn't want me to walk away. The irony was painful. In trying to prevent losing me, he had almost guaranteed he would. I stood up because sitting felt impossible, like the chair itself was too heavy with all the lies he had placed between us. I walked to the kitchen counter, gripping its edge, trying to steady my breathing. The baby moved, a soft but firm reminder that whatever decision I was about to make wasn't just about him and me anymore. It was about the future I wanted for my child, the kind of home I wanted them to grow up in. He followed me slowly, stopping a few feet away, as if he wasn't sure if he was allowed to come closer. For the first time, he looked truly afraid, not of being discovered, but of what the truth had cost him. He apologized again, but the apologies felt thin, like they were coming from someone who still hadn't fully grasped the weight of what he had done. He said he wanted to start over, that he would earn back the trust, but those words felt too easy, too quick for something this deep. Trust wasn't something you just rebuilt because you wanted to, it was something that had to grow back slowly, like a tree after a fire, and sometimes it never grew the same way again. That night, I told him I needed space. Real space. Not a few hours. Not one evening. I needed time to understand what this meant for me, for our marriage, for our child. I could see the fear in his eyes when I said that, but to his credit, he didn't argue. He nodded, hands shaking slightly, and he stepped back. For the first time since I'd known him, he didn't reach out to hold my hand. He didn't try to comfort me. He simply let me walk away. I slept in the guest room that night, though sleep wasn't really the right word for it. I lay awake, listening to the quiet house, feeling the baby turn, feeling the weight of everything that had happened settle deep into my chest. I didn't cry. I think I was too shocked to cry. Too disappointed. But in that stillness, something unexpected happened. I began to feel a sense of clarity. A painful clarity, yes, but clarity nonetheless. I realized that I had spent years admiring him for his strength, his resilience, his quiet way of moving through the world, but somewhere along the line, I had ignored my own strength. I had let his story overshadow mine, without even noticing. And now, for the first time, I had to choose whether the future I wanted included him or not. The next morning, I told him I needed to stay with my sister for a few days, not because I wanted comfort from her, but because I needed distance from him. He nodded, eyes red, and didn't try to stop me. As I packed a small bag, he sat silently on the edge of the bed, his hands clasped so tightly that his knuckles were white. He whispered that he loved me, that he loved our baby, that he would do anything to fix this. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready. At my sister's house, I finally allowed myself to feel everything, the betrayal, the confusion, the grief of losing the version of him I had carried in my heart for so long. But in the middle of all that pain, there was a quiet truth I couldn't ignore. I still cared about him. Not the lie, not the secrecy, but the human beneath it all. The man who had built a life with me, who had held me through miscarriages, who kissed my stomach every night even before the baby kicked. I didn't know if that was enough to save us, but it was enough to make me willing to try. When I returned home a few days later, he met me at the door, not with excuses, but with honesty. Real honesty. He told me he had already contacted a therapist. He told me he was done hiding from himself, from me, from anyone. For the first time since his confession, I believed him. Healing wasn't instant. It wasn't smooth. There were days when I felt myself shutting down, and days when I saw him trying harder than he ever had. Trust didn't return in one piece, it came back in small, fragile moments. But somewhere between the shared meals, the therapy sessions, the late-night talks, and the quiet mornings when he placed his hand gently on my belly, a new beginning started to grow between us. Not the perfect love we once imagined, but a real one, messy, bruised, honest. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was the kind of home I wanted our child to be born into. Not a home built on illusions, but on truth, even when it hurts. Even when it changes everything.